Good morning, everyone. Today I want to talk to you guys about a few spiritual concepts. One of these things is this notion of abundance that's out here. I think a lot of people are seeing this now, and I think it's actually a really good time for this to come out right now. But also there is a lot of questions about this, and maybe some misunderstandings, and potentially some people kind of afraid of that because they're not sure how that aligns with maybe their beliefs and that. So, we made this video here today to go ahead and try to touch on this subject in a way that hopefully will bring some light to it in a really easy, digestible way. So we'll hope you enjoy it. And, oh yeah, and by the way, once you guys are on here, hey, if you like it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like button, whatever you got to do, you can donate to. We really appreciate that. It helps keep things going. And if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, feel free to post those. We'll try to answer them right away. If it's a question, if it's a comment, you know what I mean? We hope it's whatever is going to, be mutually satisfactory for everyone involved in the communication. So, hope you have a good time. Now, there are a lot of different things out there with regard to spirituality. I mean, there's different belief systems like Buddhism, Judaism, Islamic, it's Muslimism, if you want to call it that, and Christianity, all types of different religions out there. And all religions do speak to some level about spirituality. And they're all trying to convey something about spirituality that, for the most part, does get lost in translation for a lot of people. And the reason that it gets lost in translation for a lot of people is because we should keep in mind that many of these texts were written thousands of years ago and have been reinterpreted, restated, and rewritten over the ages, and tried to be produced in a way to where people could understand them. But now, because of that, a lot of the actual real meaning and information behind them has been lost. And because of this losing of the information, and because of the fact that something that was supposed to start out as a spiritual manuscript towards spiritual transformation and growth and things like that has hardened itself into religious credos that, instead of promoting spiritual birth and growth, in fact, potentially hinder it, restrict it, and effectively squeeze it off before it has a chance to grow, and chokes it out so it dies. And because of this reason, there are so many people worldwide who are either engaged in a religion activity or actively, and they haven't received anything spiritually from it. Or there are a lot of people too who, because they didn't receive something, and decided that there is nothing spiritual going on. Or there are people who, because they've witnessed these two things, just said it wasn't worth their time at all anyways. And to some extent, these people have received some amount of benefit, or at least this is what they perceive. And the reason that they receive some amount of benefit in this is because there is an active spiritual process taking place outside of religious structures. It's a natural process that does bring people towards a greater level of spiritual awareness and understanding. And this natural process is already in place and naturally working on everyone. And for those people who disagree with that, and they would just say, well, there's no spiritual anything going on whatsoever, I would say you should probably refer to the current state of quantum physics, which is actually starting to prove otherwise. The quantum physicists are actually starting to prove that spirituality exists. And so because of that, I decided that we should make these videos because, here's what's going on. This is what's actually gone on. For the most part, there is a lot of confusion about spirituality, what spirit is, what even spiritual phasing is, why religions exist, what's good about a religion, what could be better about religions, all that. But now that we've kind of touched on that, we're going to round this back to spiritual phasing. Now, for spiritual phasing, depending on if you're somebody who's real deep in spirituality and you totally get what I'm saying and you totally accept everything, very good for you. You'll get that right away. Maybe you already mastered it. I don't know. But if you're somebody who doesn't know the first thing about spirituality, you know, what I can say about spiritual phasing is this, is deep inside of yourself, there is this center, if you will, this best way to put it is a node, or this center, or this sphere, or whatever you want to call it, of unity. This unity that is your I. So when you say I want this, I am this, I do that, all that kind of stuff, that's what's being referred to here. Now, this center of how you self-identify in what you identify as, this center actually exists because of a greater center. And this greater center actually is what effectively feeds all of these eyes. And when I say eyes, I mean every single human, every single thing that experiences itself as an individual rather than just as a conglomerate of the entirety of everything. And now, a good example of this would be, I don't know, if you take an ice cube and you put it in water, right? You have an ice cube, it's an individual cube of water. Okay, it's itself is water. It's just frozen water. You take that ice cube, you put it in a bowl full of cold water, and you can see the ice cube and tell the ice cube from the cold water. Now, on some levels, the ice cube has degrees of differences from the water because it is ice and the water is fluid water. On other levels, though, there is literally no difference between the ice and the water. Ice is still water, it's just frozen water. Yet, you can still see the ice cube as something different than the rest of the water in the bowl. That's what we're referring to here, if you can understand that. Is that all of our eyes, or all of our centers of how we perceive ourselves individually, these are like these ice cubes. And they're floating around in this great sea of water, which is the totality of spirituality, the total of all I-ness, if you will, of all the substance from which every I actually comes from and inexorably returns back to, because truly there's really no separation there. I mean, once an ice cube melts into the water, you can't tell the difference between that ice cube and the rest of the water. It literally becomes one. Now, uh, that right there is just an example of spirituality compared to individuality. You know, spirituality is now an understanding of this first concept, that there is this substance that's all present, and this substance is all present, all knowing, all powerful, all discretionary. I mean, it literally encompasses everything, and it actually is involved in everything, and it actually is evolving everything. And some people will refer to this as a force of energy. Others refer to it as God, and many people will call it many different things. It is exactly what it is, though. And this substance, for the sake of this conversation, we're calling it this. And the only reason we're calling this is not to discredit it or diminish it in any shape or form, nor to try to give anything to it that can't be prescribed to it. So, as in, we can't sit here and say something about something that we don't know for a fact, nor should we do so, nor should we not say something about something when we're having a conversation about it, because then how are we even going to have a conversation about it? So the only reason we're calling it substance for right now is for the sake of this particular conversation. So this substance from which all things arise, everything, everyone, right? Everyone arises out of this substance. If it wasn't for this substance, there would be nothing, you know? So we all arise out of this, and what we all do is we all, for lack of a better word, harden into our individual selves, our individual eyes, the ice cubes in the water, if you will. Now, this is where we're going to get a little trickier with it, so follow me on this. What I want you to keep in mind is that the ice cube example is not the firm example. Even though our individual eyes have a degree of firmness to them, a degree of concreteness, if you will, these eyes are also transformative. And in the sense that a good way to look at this would be like snowflakes. They say no two snowflakes is identical to each other, and that each of these snowflakes are formed in their own unique way. So in many ways, we as individuals are kind of like these snowflakes. Now, what I want to say is that these snowflakes have these beautiful, unique shapes that has already been scientifically proven that they take those shapes based on a certain resonance that is right there when the water basically forms into a crystal and forms the snowflakes. That resonance, that particular resonance, or that particular code, if you will, that particular signal is what really actually makes that form. Now, what we're referring to here is this signal, right? This signal also is a part of the whole entirety of the whole entire system. Okay, this whole system. So we have this substance, which is the first thing that we talked about, and then we have the individuals that rise out of that substance, and these individuals rise out of the substance per the signal or the resonance that is found across and throughout the substance. Now, this particular signal or this particular resonance, this is what many people refer to as the mind of God, and the substance being the heart of God. Now, that itself is its own discussion, because if we're going to refer to the heart of God, we will refer to the substance. If we're going to refer to the mind of God, we're going to refer to the resonance or the actual signal or the commanding force, if you will, that's going to give that substance a specific thing to do or thing to be. Now, I want you to know too that this is a really simplistic explanation of this, and the only reason I'm keeping it this simple is just for the sake of communicating here on this video. But we will explore its depths later on. So this signal then finds itself resonating within this particular ice cube or individual. And this signal sends a certain conveyance or a certain information or certain instructions to this particular individual that's risen from this substance, right? And within each one of these individuals, there are found three different phases of things occurring. There is the first matter of the form, or the first matter of the particular being or the particular I, which is to form into an individual I and to rise from the substance and to begin the process of transformation towards the end that the mind of God has in mind for them. All right, so this is this first thing that goes in. And this is what many of us experience deeply as who we actually are. We a lot of times really and greatly identify with this particular first matter. And there's a reason for that, because this particular first matter is what's placed in us so that way we can come to life, so we can survive, um, so that way we can inevitably reach the thriving state, and then thrive. And this particular uh, set of information, a lot of people would say that this is your genetic code. This is I don't know, I guess for lack of a better word, what you would have in you to
help you go from being an embryo to a baby to a toddler to an adult, etc. Okay, and most of us are just purely operating on this operating system. Okay, and now this operating system has a certain pace of natural involution and evolution that it's going to work with. Okay, and involution being how involved it becomes with the mind and substance of God and the processes that are taking place there, and the inevitability of where that's heading. So that's your involution, how involved you become with that process. And then there's also a certain degree of evolution, which is uh, how immersed you are in the actual unfolding of how that's going. So I want you to imagine it's like the difference between somebody who programs a video game and somebody who plays a video game. Now, a programmer can also be a video game player. The person can program the game and they can also play the game, and in which cases they would be involved and evolved. They would be evolving with the game as they play it, and they would be involved with the game in the sense that they could program it, make the game, change functions on the game, and things like that. For lack of better words, these would be like developers, somebody who plays a game, they find all the bugs and the glitches, and then they go back and they fix it up, they play it again, etc. Okay? Now, I want you to know, once again, this is just a very simple explanation of what's going on with everything. And I'm not telling you guys this from a place of that I want you just to take this and run with this like that's what it is. But I want to just give you an inclination of where things are at this first level. So that way you have the basis for, where we're taking this conversation next. Okay, so now that we have that in place, all right, spiritual phasing. Spiritual phasing is when one comes into the realization or they awaken to this notion of what's actually taking place. So they go from being somebody who is merely evolving, all right? So somebody who is either in a perpetual state of evolution, which there's nothing wrong with, or they are in a state of evolution and they keep poking at this idea of involution or involvement, and they inevitably come to the realization that there's something there. There's something kind of additionally. I don't want to say something else, but there's something additionally going on. That not only am I evolving, but in some way or some capacity, I'm involved. And since I'm involved with how things evolve, that must mean there's some greater system at play here. There's got to be some greater program that's happening here, because if I wasn't originally directly involved with everything and I was just evolving, and now all of a sudden I come into the realization that I am somehow involved with everything, how was everything running before I became involved? This is a really good point to get to when you're on your spiritual journey, because for those people who would say that there isn't the great program or the mind of God, these people have fallen short of this understanding. For the people who understand that there really is this greater programmer or this great mind, which is our God, they realized that the only reason that they had the ability to evolve to the point where they could become involved is because there was already somebody else involved. And this is an important point for you to get to, because for you to properly spiritually phase, you have to understand that there's already a system in place, and there's already a master program. Now, I'm not referring to some, I don't know, dark man who's sitting at the top of a tower wearing a suit with a comb over, and he's got all these, blind ambitions to dominate everyone and all that. That's not what I'm referring to at all. If anything, that would be probably what people would commonly refer to as the devil. What I'm referring to is this primary creative source, this primary space of inspiration. Um, this would be like, for instance, the person who makes the invention, and then the guy comes along and says, "Hey, we should package this, patent this, and sell this, and make a bunch of money off it." Those are two different people. The person who made the art, who is the person who's the creator, this is who I'm referring to when I say the master programmer, because the truth is this particular person is doesn't have any of those qualities of blind ambition and all this type of stuff involved in them. Thank you, sir. Sorry. Appreciate you. I should determine that instead of being passively engaged in the system, that now I should be actively or proactively engaged in the system. And so through that process, what I can do is I can take a deep look at myself and where I'm at in this process. And then I can take a deep look at the whole entire place, and I could see where it is that I should be heading. And instead of being passively engaged in that evolutionary process, I can get to a place where I'm actively engaged in that, speed up my process, and phase through levels of individuality to a higher level. And so this spiritual phasing is where, instead of it taking a whole lifetime to get to this particular level through the evolutionary process, it's like you make yourself a spiritual upgrade right away, because these 2 points come together, because the resistance that was once between them has now vanished by virtue of this understanding or this knowledge or this awareness that this is actually taking place, that this is actually this system here, and that there is this point in the future that I'm actually supposed to be anchored in inevitably. And rather than it taking all that time to get there, I'm going to then allow all of those things that would have resisted that from being present right now to fall away. And I'm going to just come into, spiritual alignment or unity of form, function, and fitness with this particular place right now. And this is what a lot of people are referring to when they have spiritual awakening, spiritual transformations, things like this. It can come to us sometimes without us even being actively engaged in it. Many of us, it's because we're actively engaged in it. But this is the beginnings of what we're referring to when we talk about spiritual phasing. And so this is the point to get to for this video. For the next video, we'll actually dive into, okay, how do we spiritually phase, and what are we hopefully spiritually phasing to, so that way we are getting the result that should be got. Thank you.